The dusty corridors of Warlock's Keep led everywhere and yet nowhere, but Szass Tam knew where he was going. Walking through the seemingly solid walls, Thay's Zulkir of necromancy felt his body magically whisked away to deeper and darker chambers of the keep. The Lich glanced around the halls as he walked, noting the many traps that would have destroyed a mortal form that walked these halls. "Larloch," Szass Tam called out, entering an ancient library. "I bring part of the payment that I promised you. Show yourself." Ashrath intoned a rumbling voice some distance away. The library slowly illuminated itself in a flickering red glow, casting a fiery light across the assembled tomes. "I've been expecting you, Tam," the voice intoned. "But you're still 3 weeks late with payment." Szass Tam walked toward the sound of the voice, rounding the end of a bookshelf and strolling nonchalantly toward an ornate golden throne pushed into a corner. Larloch, the ancient lich, who hailed from Netheril, sat amidst a clutter of books and braziers. The Shadow King's body was in stark contrast to that of Tam, while the Zulkir of necromancy strove to maintain his human appearance. Larloch was nothing more than a collection of bones partially covered in fine garments. The Netheril lich's bones were bright in colour, and trails of emerald energy travelled across his form. More than 24 iron stones circled his skull, and globes of red light gazed up at Szass Tam as he approached. "As I expected, we ran into some Harper resistance," Tam replied, taking a seat opposite the Shadow King. "They weren't going to give up the mantle without a fight. If they had any inkling of its power, they wouldn't have given it up in death either," Larloch grumbled. With a wave of his hand, the entire collection of books that lay before him scattered back to their appropriate shelf. His skeletal hand then reached toward Tam. "The mantle?" he asked. Szass reached into a pouch and pulled from its magical confines a metal vest enveloped in a violet glow. Larloch's red eyes shimmered briefly for a moment, determining the magic surrounding the mantle to be a form of preservation spell. He then took the vest from the Zulkir and laid it on the table. A moment later, Larloch glanced up at Szass Tam. "Why are you still here, Tam?" questioned the ancient lich. "This part of your payment is completed." "The search for this ancient magic has raised my curiosity," the Zulkir replied. "I wish to know more about what Netheril really was." A long moment of silence descended over the two undead creatures, their gazes locked on one another. If Szass would have had a heart, it would have been racing. Finally, Larloch replied. "You are both vain and impetuous," the Shadow King replied. "All who have visited me in the past have been destroyed, regardless of their allegiance." The Zulkir paused for a brief moment. "That is because the others who came before me were inept." "True," replied Larloch. "You have not failed me," he stated. Another long moment of silence filled the library. Years could have passed for all either of the undead cared. Time was meaningless. Finally, without warning or preamble, Larloch, the Shadow King, revealed his secret past and Netheril, the ancient city who dreamed too far. Szass Tam did not shift in his chair as Larloch placed the mantle upon the table. The necromantic artifact pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of old power that neither of the undead cared to heed. In that moment, it was little more than decoration between them. The real power in the room sat robed in rags and adorned in emerald energy, his skull gently tilting. "You wish to know what Netheril was, and who I am, Tam. Truly? Not just the myths that dance around campfires in Rashomon, or the half-sung histories that scholars stitch together with conjecture and ink." Szass Tam inclined his head. "I do. From the mouth of one who lived it." Larloch leaned back into his throne of bone and brass, a thoughtful sound clicking in his throat. For a moment, his mind wandered, Perhaps to a library of the mind with endless corridors, each one cluttered with truths no mortal dared catalogue. Then, with sudden sharp clarity, he began to speak. "I was Larloch the Golden, once," he said softly. "The bright scion of Jixida, second son of House Talgrath, sorcerer by blood, genius by birth, cursed by ambition." A flash of green lightning cracked between two bookshelves, random, snarling. It did not startle Tam, though he noted it carefully. "I was born in the late shadow of the 7th century before Dale Reckoning. You'd call that ancient, but back then, we were still young, still daring to grasp at heaven's edge. My talents surfaced early. By 30, I had discovered 3 unique paths to phylactery crafting, though I did not yet need them. By 70, I had enthralled an entire court." Szass Tam gave a faint, tight nod. "The Death Moon Orb." A wicked smile curled across Larloch's teeth, and one of his many Ioun stones shimmered violet. "Yes, my darling orb. A thing of such exquisite paranoia. It let me see everything, even into minds, even across planes. The things I learned, the lies I sowed. Even devils marveled at my subtlety." He made a small flick of his finger, and a spectral image of a silver sphere pulsing with black veins spun into the air between them. "I wove Jixidor. Every thought, every motion, threads in a conglomeration I controlled. I summoned fiends to enforce it, seduced celestials to betray their posts. My enemies? They thought they plotted behind closed doors. I was the door. I was the key. I was the room. And then you became a lich." "And then I had to," Larloch hissed, tone twisting suddenly into fury. "Mortality was too fragile. I needed permanence. I needed time. There were things I had not yet perfected. Dozens, hundreds. So I shed my skin and drank death like sweet wine." His hands trembled for a moment, fingers twitching in a complex pattern. A spell, a memory. Szass Tam could not tell. It was just in time. The year of sundered webs came, 339 DR, and the weave shattered. Jixida floated above Faerun, gazing down on the petty magocracies of Nafel and Ramathar. I was studying them, planning, spying. I would conquer them without a single battle. He spat the words, literal sparks of emerald magic flying from his mouth. But the weave screamed. Magic died. My contingency flared. I fled aboard Angalaumator, a great beast, more loyal than any servant I ever had. Moments later, my city, Larloch's bony hands opened and closed, was gone. He was silent then, silent long enough that even the flames in the braziers began to flicker uncertainly. Szass Tam watched carefully, measuring the weight of Larloch's silence. Then the Shadow King spoke again, calmer now, his voice almost mournful. "I found Orbadal some time after. My rival, Raugaleth, had ruled it, arrogant wretch. I dug through his shattered towers and made them mine. And when I found him, trapped like a rat, clawing at stone, I offered him death. And he refused it. No, Larloch whispered. He accepted it, and I denied him." A moment passed. Then Larloch laughed, long and unhinged. One of the Ioun stones flared bright red and spun wildly, as if the air itself disagreed with his mirth. "Now he serves me still. My first liege, my first shade." Szass Tam folded his hands calmly. "And after that? What kept you hidden for 2,000 years? Larloch's eyes burned. "Preparation, paranoia, purpose." He rose then, not fully, but slightly, the air trembling with raw potential as he did. "I see everything, Tam. Every outcome. Every failing. I have spent lifetimes constructing lattices of thought so perfect that even gods cannot untangle them. I have plans for every possible betrayal, every invasion, every sliver of chance. And when the multiverse inevitably shifts, I adjust. But the price," Tam said, watching the mad flicker in Larloch's glare. Yes, Larloch said quietly. The price. The more perfect the plan, the less of me remains to enjoy it. I dream now, Tam. I dream while I am awake. I forget which voice in my head is mine. I speak in circles because the straight line has long since frayed. His tone darkened again. But do not mistake madness for weakness. The world has forgotten what I am capable of. I let them forget. Another long silence. And you, Larloch said finally, settling again into stillness. You want to know what Netheril was? I do, Szass said, again, calmly, because I intend to build something greater. Larloch stared at him for a long time, then chuckled again. Greater. Careful, Tam. That is the same ambition that killed a god. His skull tilted. Fine. Stay. Ask your questions. But remember, each answer costs you. Szass allowed himself the faintest of smiles. I have paid higher prices for less valuable truths. Without a word, Larloch's bony fingers twisted in a sharp gesture, and a seam in the air split open like a wound. A ripple of greenish-blue light spilled forth, and from that shimmering gap, he drew forth a massive tome bound in skin that pulsed faintly, as though remembering the heartbeat it once had. The Lich laid it gently upon the table between them, the pages stiff and yellowed with extreme age, yet perfectly preserved. Etched across the cover in fine arcane script were the words, "Of the Fall of Netheril," penned by Raugilath, the Ageless. Szass regarded the book in silence, taking in the exquisite craftsmanship and the unmistakable aura of grim reverence. I had him write it, Larloch said softly. Raugilath, my old rival, my first servitor. It was the only task left worthy of his mind. He resisted, at first, called it necromantic vanity, but in time, he understood. He tapped the cover with one long polished nail. Every page reviewed, every passage cross-checked. Not even Myth-Nantar's scribes preserve history as purely. The entire chronicle was delivered to Candlekeep in secret. Yes, even they bowed to its completeness. A rare flicker of pride ghosted through his voice. It is the truth of Netheril, not the myths, not the warnings passed down by frightened elves or the bloated scholars of Cormyr. This is how empires die when they forget to fear their own reach. He slowly turned the cover open, and the first page breathed out a faint sigh, enchanted air spilling free as though the book itself were exhaling ancient dust and sorrow. Read, Tam, and know why we fell. The pages turned themselves. The shadows leaned in to listen, and Szass did not speak again for some time. In 3520, the arch-wizard Ulaum disappeared. Several of his friends, including Szass, believed he left Netheril because he depended heavily on magic to maintain his life. After all, he was nearly 3,000 years old. His final fate remained unknown. Panic surged through Netheril as the citizens learned of Ulaum's disappearance, and the arch-wizards that remained feared that there would be a revolt. Szass, feeling the responsibility for Netheril's future on his shoulders, felt that it was his duty to weld the nation back together. He finished his divine spell. It was designed to temporarily steal the powers of a deity. When he cast the spell, he chose Mistral, the goddess of magic, in the process changing forever the way magic functions. Knowledge has always outweighed wisdom, and Szass was no exception. His body swelled with the sudden influx of godly power, and his mind filled with unimaginable knowledge. Szass instantly realized the horrible mistake he had made. He stole the power from the one god he shouldn't have. Mistral's position called for one of the aspects of her psyche to constantly rework the weave of magic. The weave that Netheril and its glut of magic and the Faerim with their unique spells constantly threatened to unravel. When Mistral lost her ability to keep the weave of essential magic intact, the inundation of magic surged and fluctuated, and the effects of all things magical doubled for a time. She sacrificed herself to save the weave before the damage became irreparable. This broke Szass's link to her magic and obstructed the weave, causing all magic to briefly cease functioning. Without the infusion of magic, the floating cities of Netheril fell, and Szass was instantly slain. His bloated body, petrified, toppled from the high plateau above his floating city and plummeted to Faerun. As his body fell, his stony eyes, still shimmering with the last glint of godly omniscience, caught a glimpse of the cities of Netheril smashing to the ground, killing all their inhabitants. His heart broke. Greed for the power of the deities themselves caused the destruction of his home, his family, his friends, and his people. Larloch let the tome lie open for a while, his empty eye sockets fixed on the chapter's final words. The iron stones spinning about his skull slowed almost imperceptibly, like vultures catching a windless moment. Szass, he muttered at last, the name like ash falling from his tongue. Brilliant. Szass did not reply, watching the elder lich with interest as a silence thick with ancient memory settled between them. He meant well, Larloch continued, his voice carrying a rare softness. He truly thought he was saving us, thought himself the keystone that could mend an empire crumbling under its own arcane weight. His skeletal fingers brushed the edge of the page like one might pet a favored beast long dead. But knowledge, Tam, knowledge is only ever half the blade. And the other half? Tam asked quietly. Wisdom, Larloch hissed. The thing no god can grant, no spell can teach, and no library can lend. The violet glow of the mantle dimmed on the table as time unravelled once more in the flickering red library. Larloch had grown eerily still again, his hands folded beneath his chin as though deep in some ancient equation, calculating a universe where every variable bent to his will. Szass, never one for wasting breath, let the silence settle, then cut cleanly through it. You did not vanish after Netheril fell. You built a kingdom beneath the world's feet. The crypt, the collection, the legends. Larloch's jaw shifted slightly, the gesture neither amused nor bitter, just aware. Ah yes, Warlock's crypt, he muttered, as if it was some amateur's conjuring den. Orbadal, Tam. It was called Orbadal, a city of towers that scraped the stars and bent moonlight to mortar. Now, reduced to a cautionary tale told by frightened sages in taverns far too well lit. He waved a skeletal hand vaguely, and an illusion shimmered into the air, an elegant ruin floating above the ocean, veiled in mist, like a dream held barely in memory. They renamed it. They always rename things they don't understand. Szass leaned forward slightly, clasping his fingers. You made it your fortress and your prison. Larloch's skull tilted. A dozen Ioun stones flickered different colours as if reacting to his thoughts. I did not make it a prison. They did. The world did. When the art you pursue becomes so terrible, so complete, that the gods themselves hesitate to peer into your crypt, there are only two options. You ascend or you burrow deeper. He looked toward Tam, voice now calm and ancient. I burrowed, and in time, the worms came to dig me out. Szass said nothing. Larloch continued, voice echoing strangely as the shadows deepened around them. Adventurers, would-be dragon slayers in shining mail, cloaked assassins, fools who called themselves archmages. They came with fire, faith, and ambition. He lifted one hand. Ghostly forms danced in miniature in the air, knights burning, mages frozen in time, rogues consumed by acid or disintegration. 16 red wizards of Thay came to me, he said, his gaze settling on Tam. Some, on your orders, some not. One survived. Barely. Not because he was clever, but because he was quiet. Szass Tam's face betrayed nothing. That one returned with nothing but madness. He burned his notes, spoke only of orbs in the sky and a voice in the stones. Larloch chuckled. That was me being polite. His fingers tapped together slowly. They wanted what I had, Tam. The Horde. The true Horde. Not dragon's gold, but magic. Spellbooks from fallen ages. Artifacts the world has forgotten. Scepters from Netheril's high days. Things that should not exist, yet still do. I own them. Some I made. Others I stole. A few I simply waited for. And the Ion stones, Tam noted, his voice steady. You've refined them. Ah, my precious constellation, Larloch said wistfully, gesturing toward the spinning motes. They do more than empower. They sing, each one a verse of a grand spell I haven't yet cast. He stopped suddenly, head jerking as if hearing something far away. And yet, he said more softly, even in that deep cold power, I grew bored. I needed contrast, movement. You unleashed an army? Tam said flatly. 200 liches bore your mark and struck Myth Drana. Larloch shrugged, his spine cracking faintly. Unleashed? No. I freed them. Every mind I had bound, every fragment I controlled, I gave them liberty. What they did with it was unfortunate. You call attacking Baelnorns and Silverhand a misstep. I call it predictable, Larloch growled, voice flaring into static and venom. They were made of fragments, shadows of ambition. I needed to know what they would do when given choice. It was an experiment, one I regretted only slightly. Tam's voice dropped. You confronted the Knights of Myth Drana yourself. Of course, Larloch said, almost wistfully. To apologize. This gave Szass Tam pause. You apologized? Larloch's skull tilted back, sockets glowing like crimson stars. Storm Silverhand allowed me to witness the silver fire. Real divine power. Not stolen, not faked. Gifted. She let me see it up close. Do you understand what that means, Tam? Szass Tam did not reply. It was the first kindness I had been shown in centuries. Larloch whispered. A thing so bright, so untainted. I knew it could destroy me. And she knew it too, but she let me see. And did you covet it? I fear it. I respect it. I studied it in a moment that lasted forever. But no, I would not steal from her. It would undo me. Szass Tam's expression shifted, just slightly. You felt something, even as a lich. Larloch was silent for a long time. Then, there is no magic in the world that can entirely unmake the man you once were. Even I cannot erase him. He wanders still, beneath the madness, dreaming, regretting. The red light in the room dimmed again. Larloch leaned closer across the table. And that is why you're here, Tam. You see it too. The rot beneath the crown, the flaw in every empire. Szass Tam inclined his head. I came to learn, and I have, but I also came to prepare. For what? Szass Tam's eyes glinted. The firelight in the ancient library guttered suddenly, casting sharp lines across Larloch's bony visage. His Ion stones had slowed again, now gliding in tight, silent arcs above his head, like moons entering eclipse. I nearly had it, Tam, he said, voice low but sharp with bitterness. The weave, the shell of Candlekeep's wards, the mythal of Myth Drana, all drawn in like breath. It was perfect. He clenched a skeletal fist and the air around him crackled faintly. Szass Tam did not move. You attempted to ascend, he said plainly. Again. Larloch turned sharply, his sockets burning. I would have become the new god of magic. Not a goddess cloaked in sentiment, no. A mind of precision. A will forged from 2 millennia of clarity. The art would have been pure. But instead, Tam said with surgical calm. You were interrupted, Larloch snarled. The Shrinshi, she was supposed to be gone, fading into myth. And Elminster, that meddling conjurer, has lingered far too long, like a stubborn stain on silk. The weave is not so easily seized, Tam murmured, folding his hands behind his back. You know this? You knew this? And still you tried. Larloch's expression twisted, something unhinged dancing behind his regal posture. And what is life but the accumulation of failed attempts until one succeeds gloriously? You juggle Thay's thrones like baubles, I juggle realms. Szass Tam's eyes narrowed. And now Raugalath is gone. At that, Larloch fell strangely still. The silence lingered like frost on stone. He broke free, Tam continued, during the death curse. Cleverly done, I admit. The shattered soulmonger, not a resource I had considered in that light. A sound escaped Larloch's throat, half laugh, half growl. He was always persistent, always whispering behind the walls of his prison, thinking I couldn't hear him. I let him write history to give him purpose, to keep his mind occupied. I thought I'd broken him. Szass Tam inclined his head. Apparently, you taught him too well. Larloch let out a dry, rasping breath. Then let him go. The world has changed since Raugalath was relevant. Let him claw at its edges. Let him try to matter. The flames flared brighter for a moment, then dimmed again. And you? Tam asked. Will you try again? Larloch turned away, his robes flowing like shadows stitched together by will. Of course. You do not spend 20 centuries chasing omniscience and then stop. The weave wants a steward. And I'm the only one fit to wear that mantle. Szass Tam did not smile, but there was a faint glint in his eye. Then I suppose I shall see you at the next cataclysm. Larloch stopped at the edge of the library, the red glow bathing his skull in firelight. No, he said softly. You'll witness it, but you won't see it coming. Then, with the sound of 100 pages turning at once, the Shadow King was gone. Tam stood alone among the books. He said nothing more, but in his mind he was already calculating, and deep below Warlock's crypt, the ancient stones remembered every word.